Earliest gaming memories. Let's go. Hey YouTube, welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing swell. Okay, it's time for a VR. You know your boy Tony loves a good VR. I just watched Retro Gaming Langers and Retro Red Steve's. Steve did a VR to Retro Gaming Langers. Earliest gaming memories. I've been sitting here, right here, taking a trip down memory lane, trying to remember my earliest gaming memories, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks for inspiring me to make this very video. Okay, but let's get into it, shall we? So I think, if I really think about it, I might be wrong. It's always a bit foggy when you get into your 40s. When you're like, I'm looking back to when I was like age 7, I think I started to know what video games were, or maybe a bit younger. But if I really think about it, I think it was in school. Yes, I actually went to school, believe it or not. No, I think it was in school where when it rained, we were allowed to come inside and play computer games on the school computers. I think they were called BBC computers. They were just bricks, do you know what I mean? Very basic. There was no such thing as a mouse on those. It was everything was keyboard, okay? But they did have, if I remember right, it was floppy disks. Like big, huge disks, like that big. They used to put in the disk drive thing. Floppy disk drive, believe it or not. And the first time I remember playing a game was a game called ER Kung Fu, and I just thought it was amazing. It was like we're controlling what's on the screen, and it was like the whole class, boys and girls, were just engrossed in this ER Kung Fu game, and it was like take it in turns. It was one player, but it was basically have a go, then you got to get up from the seat. And it was really funny because everyone was like, what's the keys? Because you had to use the keyboard. There was no control pad or joystick or anything in those days. I think it was so exciting. It was like the lunch break was coming towards the end, and I must have been quite close to the back of the queue or something. And I was the last person before the bell rang to play. But I just remember, I think I had my ass kicked. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but it was so much fun. So I think that there is where my first interaction with what is a video game was playing ER Kung Fu on, I'm pretty sure it was the BBC computer, as they were known as back then. So that would have started or prompted me into asking my mum and dad, like, what do you want for Christmas and stuff like that. And I wanted a computer. You know, there was no such thing in my little world. No, games consoles didn't exist as far as I knew. So I wanted a computer. And so I started asking Father Christmas for a computer. And I think what happened was my father's best friend from work, he was very tech savvy back then. He was an absolute nerd. He's no longer with us now, unfortunately. But he sold us, or he sold my parents, one of his old computers. So we're talking about the 80s now, right? And it was called a Toshiba MSX. If I can find a picture, I'll put it up there, okay? Very basic, even more basic, I think, than even more basic than what we had in school, more basic than the BBC computers, because this was running on cassette tapes. I've got a cassette. So, you newbies out there, video games used to be on these things, right? So they used to run really slow. They used to have to load. I'm talking a couple of minutes just for the game to load. You get to level 2, and they'd have to load level 2, okay? So that's what we grew up with. We didn't know any different back then. Okay. So I think so we had this Toshiba MSX. But what was different to school was it was on cassettes, like I said, it was a separate cassette loader, if I remember right. And it had a joystick. So what is this? We never knew what it was. So I had, I think I can picture it. I muddled it up with my Commodore 64 controller, or joystick, arcade stick. It was far from an arcade stick, okay? But the games I can remember playing on it, okay, it was 3 really good games, okay? It was one called Manic Miner. They're all platforming games back then. I wanted like a fighting game, I suppose, but when we had the Toshiba, it came with like a bunch of loose cassettes, whatever this guy had sold us, and that was it. We never had any new games for that system ever again. So it came with, and they were really good games. Manic Miner was a mad soundtrack, quite a hard game, but level 1 was I remember level 1 was really hard, but once you got past level 1 and figured out the mechanics, there's no tutorials back then, guys. Once you figured out the mechanics, level 2, 3, 4, it was quite an easy game compared to level 1. We didn't complete it. We were nowhere near completing any of these games, okay? But Manic Miner was a really good game. Another good one, similar-ish kind of gameplay, was a game called Chucky Egg. They're random names, aren't they? That was a really good, fun game. I know a lot of my friends, I think that must have been on the consoles as well, maybe on the Spectrum, stuff like that. But that's what I grew up with. And another one, which we absolutely loved, was a game called Hunchback. And it's like, I can see it now. I remember level 1, it's all coming back to me. Level 1 was like, you had to jump over these, like you were like in a castle, on the castle walls, and there was these knights and they had sticks and they were like stabbing up or something. And then you had to jump over them, but you had to time your jump. So while the stick or sword probably, or spear was fully extended, obviously you die then. So we finally got past level 1. And I remember level 2 it was just like a rope swing. And to jump on the swing and jump off the other side. I know it sounds simple now, but that just blew mine and my brother's minds back then, how good this game was. So yeah, that was the Toshiba MSX. So I probably would have been around about 8 years old playing that. Then we had the handhelds. So I remember, well, in my school, on the last day of term, like the last day before summer holidays, Christmas holidays, it was like a mess around day. There wasn't really lessons. You just could bring a toy in with you. So I remember bringing in, it was so good. I still got it. Maybe I'll do a video on some of my old toys. Manta Force. Does anyone remember Manta Force? The best toy ever made, in my opinion. I had Manta Force and I had Red Venom, okay? We're not going to talk about them, but I brought that in. But then some of my friends had these games, like handheld games. I was like Tiger Electronics. One had a Mario Game & Watch, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Because I thought they were better games in your hand than what I had at home, okay? So then Christmas was coming, and the Game Boy hadn't long come out. So I was like, I didn't know what I wanted, but I remember I was mad, absolutely mad into, I'm sure lots of other people were as well. I was obsessed with Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, okay? Michelangelo was my favourite alongside Raphael, okay? I like their dynamic, okay? I used to, every fortnight, the comic used to come out. My dad used to give me money to nip up a shop and get the comic. I had all the posters on my wall. I must have watched the movie 30, 40 times. I was Mr. Ninja Turtles, okay? So I remember like overhearing my mum and dad, because I still believed in Father Christmas back then, and they were talking about a Game Boy. So I thought, in my head, my mum and dad had spoke to Father Christmas and he was getting me a Game Boy, okay? So I had a Turtles Game Boy, and I got it right here. Santa, you damn fucked up, son. That's not a Game Boy. But my parents, they didn't know. They didn't know, okay? I completed this loads of times. It probably still works. I have got the back thing to it, but it keeps coming off for some reason. But yeah, this was like an LED, very basic gameplay. But I played it. It wasn't very good. I think deep down back then, I knew it wasn't very good. It wasn't a very good game. But because it was Turtles, I just went with it, you know. Very unusual shape. I don't get it. That's probably... This part here is just for the 2 AA batteries to go in, okay? I remember having a terrible soundtrack or sound effects. It was just noise, okay? You could change the sound. I think you turn the sound on and off. So my parents didn't like me playing this in the car with the sound on. But I finished that an absolute ton of times. I stuck with it just because it was Turtles, you know. And so that's staying with the handhelds. I did have Zelda. I wish I could find that. I had Zelda Game & Watch. It's the only Zelda game I've ever completed. And it was the early design of the Nintendo DS, the dual screen. So I had 2 screens, screen up here, screen down here. Very similar design. It had 1 attack button. But I completed that loads of times. My next door neighbour had it first. And then I remember we were in Argos. And there was a sale on. And I remember I used to go in with the pens. And I wrote it down just to see how much it was. And it was something like £10. I think it was normally £25 or something. And I had £10 on me, so that's how I got Zelda. Anyway, going back, that was my first memory of playing in my house a handheld gaming device. And the other one, or the last early memory, because we are going back, this is the 80s we're talking about now, is I had an N64, I always muddle it up, a Commodore 64, okay, and it was bought with my money. It was mine. I went halfers with my brother, and I can't, it was such a weird one. It wasn't Christmas. I don't know what it was. It wasn't at either of our birthdays, but we had money. And I remember my parents making a big deal about going to Nationwide Bank, where my mother used to work. And it was like as if they were teaching us how to withdraw money. But we were like, I don't know, 9 or 10? As if life skills, just teach our kids how to go to the bank. But it was quite funny because it was a big event. I remember it being my parents making a big fuss out of it. So I took out however much it was. My brother took out the same. And then I remember there was a money box, a Nationwide money box, like for display. And I was like, oh, do I put my money in there? I don't know what, I didn't have a clue what I was doing, okay? And then I remember walking to Argos and buying our first proper home games PC, I suppose. And it was the Commodore 64 with this pack in it, okay? So the Night Moves pack. There was another pack in there as well. It was like a Mind Games pack or something. But my favourite game on the Commodore 64 was this game here, Midnight Resistance. Oh my god, I absolutely j'adore Midnight Resistance. Looking back at gameplay, it's very basic, but it kind of was the first game I ever played which had RPG elements in it, where the first level's basically scroll right. There's enemies coming at you from either way. It's one hit kills. So you've got like a machine gun, a basic machine gun. You get to the end, or close to the end of the stage, you've got to fight a tank, which is really cool. So again, it's the first game I remember there being bosses at the end of every stage. You beat the tank, you go up this ladder, but there was like a shop in between levels where you can buy certain guns and different bullets and stuff like that. And it was like one with homing missiles. It was I can't talk. It's like an early version of Contra, okay? I don't know which came out first, okay? But I think they borrow from each other. But yeah, and each level was very different. There was some then where you got to like go on your hands and knees and you got to crawl along and like go down and find the gaps and drop down. There was another stage then where you got to go up a tree, so you got to go vertical. Absolutely fantastic memories playing that. There was loads of Commodore 64 games. You got the Turtles games which I had. I've got it up there. But no, the Midnight Resistance, I think because it was one of the first games I played as well on the Commodore 64, I think that's why it's embedded in my brain, you know. So thanks for coming up with this really good idea, Retro Gaming Langers. I really enjoyed this video. If anyone else wants to do a VR, don't forget to tag him in the description. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Love you. Bye.